welcome back to the Happy Campers Book Club. As you can see, we have a slightly new group, a little bit smaller this week, so we can promise you we're going to be a little bit shorter than last week's epic book club meeting. Not sure if any of you have managed to watch the whole thing, but we had some junior counselors visit us, and they were really great, so we ended up talking a lot longer than we had planned last week. But this week, we're talking about Camp Secret number 5, Grit is Grown Outside the Comfort Zone. And I'm going to start because we do have some new people. Why don't we start by introducing ourselves and saying how old our kids are. Start over here.
I'm Andy Meshberger. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old.
Yes, you do.
I do. They are strong, independent women.
Yes, they are. And I'm Audrey, and I have 5 kids currently range in age from 15 to 25.
I'm Kelly, and I have an 8-year-old and an 11-year-old.
I'm Chelsea, and I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old.
And I'm Suzanne, and I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old.
So as always, we have quite a good range of ages here. And we also have 2 teachers, former teachers, current teacher. What grade do you teach?
I'm reading intervention.
Reading
/
intervention.
library.
Okay, great. Okay. So we also all work with kids outside of our own families, so we have a little bit of experience with this. So this chapter, there's been a lot of talk lately about grit. Angela Duckworth, you mentioned earlier. I think I mentioned her in here too. And also Paul Tough, in his book, How Children Succeed, identified resilience or grit as one of the factors that's most predictive of success in life. And he did research both with kids at the KIPP Academy, so kids from low socioeconomic status, all the way through like more affluent kids at private schools, and found the same thing, that the best predictor of completing college was actually resilience, not grades or test scores. So it's a really important trait to try to develop in ourselves and our kids, and so that's why we have a chapter about it. So the quote at the beginning of our workbook discussion guide is, "Most growth and learning happens in that magical space just outside our comfort zone, where we are just a bit scared or challenged. Our slightly elevated heart rate and nerves actually propel us to work harder and do better." And that's from page 108 on the book, and I think that might be near the little diagram. Oh, it is. The diagram, which you will see on page 109. This is something we've been using at camp to just kind of show that we all have this thing in the middle of the circle, kind of our comfort zone, where those are things that we can kind of do no problem. We feel very comfortable doing them. And then outside of that, when we're pushing ourselves a little bit, growing our skills, it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes our heart rate's a little up. And then there's thing that's too far outside, and that's when we just kind of shut down and can't even try. So with your own kids or with yourself, do any of you guys have an example of something where you've seen your child in that like magical growth zone? Like, what's an example of when you've seen someone just push themselves, like they're nervous but they want to do it, and then they actually end up doing it and feel good? Does anyone have any stories?
Yeah. So my 6-year-old just became a camper, and so she has for a long time been telling me how terrified she was of the zip line. This was, she described it this evening as her most scary activity, which she signed up for free time. And after she did it the first time, I asked her, "Oh, so you went on zip line, how was it?" She said, "It was the best day of my life." And I think she was convinced that it was scary because she doesn't like heights. And she went and was encouraged. So she wasn't blacked out. She didn't freak out. She wasn't comfortable. And when she did it, she figured out that she really enjoyed kind of the thrill of it. And I think that's that space we're talking about between where she's comfortable, which would be, if I'm honest, arts and crafts, and where she would black out, which is probably the high ropes course. She found something in between, and that's a place where she figured out that she really liked it and she could really grow. And she's really pleased with herself. So
that's a great story. And then maybe it'll help her maybe feel more comfortable pushing herself to try something on the high ropes course or something.
Well, I think it's one of those things, because we talked about, "Oh, you said you were so scared of this." And she said, "Well, I was scared of it." I said, "But you did it." And she said, "Well, yeah, you have to try things."
Oh, gosh.
And so I think like that's the growth. Like, the growth isn't stepping off the platform. The growth is figuring out the scary things can be fun.
Or signing yourself up for it.
Yeah, well, she signed up for it tonight, so.
On her first free time.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, okay. That's good. Well, we were talking a little bit earlier. We share a similar one. which is public speaking. That's actually the number one fear of people,
Really?
more than
Interesting.
heights
Okay.
and anything else.
Really?
It is absolutely for adults. And this is the thing that's interesting in this chapter, and some of the feedback I've heard from this chapter. I know he's in the book club, so I don't want to throw him under the bus by identifying him. But this chapter actually spurred one of the parents I know to reach for a goal that's a little bit outside his comfort zone because he wants to model it for his kids. And so that's another thing. Do any of you guys have an example of something that you want to kind of maybe try sometime, or something that you can tell your kids, hey, I've always wanted to do this, I've been nervous about it? Do you guys have any goals like that would be cool to sort of model for your kids, showing your own grit?
That's a tough one. I have a few of those. I tend to not, I think I have grit in a lot of areas, but the fear of not being able to do something correctly, exactly right is something I have. And so I do things in small bits, and I'm hoping the kids see that I'm a hard worker, and I think that's where my grit shows, not necessarily trying new things. I'm kind of a creature of habit, but I think that's okay too, as long as you show grit in other areas of your life, and you work hard, and you're resilient, and you push through the hard times, and you show that to your kids. I think that's just as important as setting goals that I'm not ready to do right now because of my time in my life.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I actually think that we used to refer to hard work as what now people talk about as persistence or grit.
Mhm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, I think when I was a kid, I think it was more like that, like
Right.
keep working at something even if it's not easy,
Right.
or it takes a long time, and like delaying gratification,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. I think that is part of it.
Yeah.
Like, keep trying something or working at something until you can master it or do better at it.
Right.
Yeah, that's the thing. Anybody have any like goals, any reach goals that you guys have thought about or not thought about lately?
Well, for me, I kind of live in my comfort zone outside of work, but when it comes to work, I find I try to push myself a lot. So, but it's things that might sound a little silly, like we have these little robots at school, and I decided I was going to use them with the TK class. But that's like, there's other teachers that they're like, what? Why would you give the TK students robots and iPads? And so
Right.
things like that, I'll try to push myself out of my comfort zone in work, but I don't often do that outside.
Right. Okay. Yeah. But I bet you'd be surprised. Some of the things that maybe are in your comfort zone now maybe weren't always. That's the other part
Oh,
of this.
absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
almost hard as an adult to reflect back.
Right.
Can you guys remember anything from your own childhoods that was like something that you were very nervous about, but you ended up trying anyway and maybe liking? Does anyone have any examples? Or we can't remember that far back.
It's hard to remember that far back.
When just the public speaking thing, because I don't enjoy it, but I signed myself up for MUN in high school.
What's that?
Model United Nations.
Oh my gosh.
Which
Yeah.
you go
Right,
and that's all you do
that's
is
all you do,
public
yeah.
speaking.
Wow.
And I really enjoyed it. I don't
mhm.
I don't know why. And I was always nervous before I had to give
Yep.
a speech, but I did it. So
Yeah. Well, that little bit of nervousness, and this is something also that is becoming more mainstream to this knowledge. We've been in this time where everyone's like, oh my gosh, I feel anxious. That's bad. Where we all know that actually it's good to
Yes.
feel just a little bit. It
Absolutely.
actually makes
Right.
you do better at things. And you kind of think of sometimes you look at a kid who's completely kicked back and not at all stressed, for example, about school or something. Do you know what I mean? There's there's not enough stress almost to like get the person motivated. And I agree. Like for me, track, I was always terrified. I did not like it all, the gun going off. And I mean, I was like feeling like I was going to be sick right before races. And I mean, it's like I hated it, but then I kept doing it. But I liked being on the team,
Right,
and I
right.
actually liked practicing and stuff. So in general, I liked it, but it almost never got used to that. And even now, when I do longer races, I'm kind of nervous, even though I'm not even trying to compete or
Right.
anything. It's like there's something weird about just being at the starting line. But then once you get going,
Right.
you're like, oh, why was I so nervous? You know? I don't know. So that's a good thing. But okay, well, let's go to some of the questions in the workbook. The first one is, the over-parenting trend that emerged in the 90s led to a, quote, generation of adults who hesitate to take risks, fear failure, turn to substances to stifle difficult emotions, and want rewards for average performance. We now see that allowing kids to experience discomfort is necessary for the development of resilience and growth in confidence. Think back to your own upbringing. Were you raised in a sink or swim atmosphere or in a home with helicopter parents? How has your own family history influenced your parenting style? I was definitely a sink or swim family. In fact, I remember, I still have these memories of like 5 years old, Lake Tahoe. I had to go water skiing, like in the water, crying. My sister was crying when she learned to. That was just how we did it, because it was like we were on a vacation, we were going water skiing. There wasn't any of this, do you want to try? You want to wait a year? It was like, that was my family. That was just one example. But how about you guys? Were you more...
Depends on which parent we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
My dad is definitely a throw him in the pool to see if he can swim. My mom is much more, no, let's take some time. Are you comfortable? So I
That's
probably ended up
kinda
somewhere in
good.
the middle, yeah.
Yeah, you probably got a good balance then.
Yeah, generally.
Yeah. The helicopter will save
Yeah,
you.
she swooped in.
If the
Yeah.
sink or
Okay.
swim was
Yeah,
a
if
little
I was
too much.
sinking,
That
she
didn't
was there to,
Yeah.
to extend a life tube. So
That's actually pretty good. Yeah. How about you guys?
Definitely, I think sink or swim. I remember vividly my mom helping me with projects, but more of teaching me along the way and letting me do it, which was important. But definitely, I wasn't giving tons of options. It was, would you like to do this or this? And that was it. It wasn't like, okay, so you don't like this, let me see what else we'll do. It was more of, you're going to do it, and if you like it, great. If you don't, well, there's always next time. So it was, but I think the way they did it, I think was good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you
I'd say
guys-
probably more helicopter actually.
Your
or
parents?
similar to Andy.
Yeah.
My mom was a little bit helicopter.
Uh-huh.
My dad was probably a little quieter,
Mhm.
but when she wasn't around, it was a lot more like,
This is
"Go
what we're
ahead.
doing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go ahead, do whatever it is that we're doing. But yeah, I'd say she was probably a little more helicopter.
Okay, well, so now how about describe your own now? I don't know if you want to share yours or you
Well,
feel like
I'm fine. But I sink or swim was more.
sink or swim. Okay, so now as parents, what do you think your style is more?
Swimming?
I feel like you're very comfortable with your kids like being upset.
well, yeah.
Like, no, you know what I mean? Like
I-
they can be uncomfortable and it doesn't
Yeah.
like put you over the edge.
Well, I think, everything I do is fairly informed by working at camp. So we talk a lot about child development and grit. And like before we had kids, all of this, I taught for 14 years. So and my wife taught for a long time and works at camp. So yeah, I'm super comfortable. Like they have to be uncomfortable to grow. Growing is never comfortable. So if the 3-year-old who perhaps gets upset more than you think is normal, like I'm okay with her being really upset for 15 minutes. Like you had options and you don't want any of those options, then you can be sad for a little while and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't mind my girls being anxious or upset. I think it's healthy for them.
Yeah.
But I have the great advantage of
Yeah.
like parenting with a whole lot, like I got a lot of training before I had kids. So I don't know. I think it informs a lot of what we do as parents. So
Yeah. I think I kind of helicoptered a little bit. In a way, but then I also really wanted people to try things, and I think I did for for the kids who really wouldn't try anything, I was more pushy. For kids who were more, like it depended on the kid, but there are some kids who will never try anything without, they need a little bit of a gentle encouragement in order to try things. So I really think it does vary with the kid, like your style. How about you guys? Do you feel you're more helicopter versus sink or swim or somewhere in the middle?
It's the same way for you. I have 2 very different children,
Uh-huh.
and one needs to be. I need to be Boris for him,
Uh-huh.
and the other one I can be
Yes.
a lot nicer because she just has more grit, and she.
Right. Yes.
I just said she. I was going to say.
That's
which
okay.
one was I?
That's okay. They'll never see this.
But so I don't have to push her because she pushes
Right.
herself.
Yes.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. How about?
I'm similar in that my daughter has a lot more grit, I think, although now that my son's getting older, I see that more in him, which is really nice to see. He tends to, if has a discomfort, we try to talk through it, and I don't want to make excuses for him, but at the same time, I don't like to see him uncomfortable. So it's that battle between the two. But I've seen a big shift between 14 and 15 with him having more grit and more resilience and being able to get it done when he needs to. And so that's been really neat to see over the last year, because before that I wasn't sure if that was going to happen. And I have to admit, I've gone to school because I work from home, so I've gone to school to drop things off. I know I'm not supposed to, but I have done it, so I'm going to confess.
Hello, my name is Chelsea.
Yeah.
I once took my child's homework to school.
Yeah, and I mean, I've dropped off tissue paper for the piñata in Spanish class.
Right.
So now all the kids in the class know that I work from home, and I'm willing to go get the tissue paper.
Oh my gosh,
So-
now you're everybody's rescuer.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
That's so you, though.
I know, and it's terrible,
helper.
and I know I
Right.
shouldn't do it, but I thought, okay, anyway, yeah, I digress. But
Yeah.
anyway, I'm trying to be better about that, and we'll see.
They're great. You're doing
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
fine.
fabulous. I'm very sink or swim, which
Really?
seems to work better with one than the other.
Uh-huh.
So we've been trying a gentler approach with the younger one.
Right.
So yeah, they're very different, and it works well with the older
Yeah.
one, and not so much with the other. So.
That's the problem with this whole thing, you know? Unfortunately, it's not just like one thing is going to work with every
No.
kid. And we see that at camp a lot too.
Absolutely.
But I do think one of the things, and I think especially this summer, we've had some experience with just some parents who really struggle with their kid being uncomfortable.
Yes.
And I think that's something to come to terms with. It's very difficult as a parent to see your child like
Right.
suffering in any way, but understanding how growth occurs. There are some kids that are going to need to have some discomfort. Well, actually, everybody needs it at some
Yeah,
point.
Yeah.
absolutely.
But as a parent, you really have to figure out how you're going to handle that. And with some kids, it's more difficult,
Right.
Right, because they are more uncomfortable. So, do you guys have any strategies for that? Like how you overcome your own discomfort when you know that something is like it's good for your kid, and you're gonna like kind of have to just like they need to do it.
Yeah.
So what do you do? How do you like, you know, how do you encourage them? Like what do you do to make it so that you can make it through?
Well, so psychologically for myself, you asked earlier about like a place where you can grow. I look at like dealing with their discomfort as a place where I can grow. Like, because my comfort zone is for them to be very comfortable and happy. And when they're not, like, you are uncomfortable. But the more I've allowed them to be uncomfortable, the more comfortable I've become with them being uncomfortable. And especially when it's a situation where I know they're safe and I know everything is for the benefit. Like, I don't love that they're unhappy, but I know enough to know that the end is going to be beneficial, and my discomfort is less important than their growth. So,
Yeah. But I do think, I mean, I honestly think part of this thing is knowing like the kids are different and in how big their comfort zone is. And for those kids with the really small one, we have to be really gentle. And we've learned a lot about the
Yep.
yes brain and the green zone and all that stuff. But so kids need different things. And that's why, like in the book, I talk about how with my oldest daughter, the swim lessons, it was a total sink or swim. And this old guy who's been teaching everyone how to swim and everyone loved him. And it was like, throw the kid in the pool and they kind of like flap around. And it was just like, they're underwater and he gives them like a slight shove and they make it to the steps. And it was completely fine for my oldest daughter. And that's what I wrote about in here. And I was like, oh, it works. Like, that is a style that works. And then my next kid, I was like, this doesn't work. And it was, the thing was, she was obedient and was doing it. But I was watching, I was like, this is like beyond uncomfortable. This is like traumatic.
Right.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think it just takes a lot. I don't think it's good to just say there's this one way for whatever it
Sure.
is with kids. And that's what makes it kind of complicated, I
But I
think.
think once you see them in that zone, you can't go to the opposite zone with them or
Right.
comfort them so much that they
Right.
don't have any discomfort
Right.
too. So
Right.
I think a lot of parents do that where
Yes.
they say, oh gosh, they're flailing, they're
Right.
they're in that blackout zone,
Yeah.
like that's
Yeah.
in the circle, and then they go to the
Ex-
complete
yeah.
180 and then they can't get back to that
Right.
growth zone.
Right.
Um,
Like they never try anything again because it was so uncomfortable
Right.
for the
Yeah.
kid and for them. It's like, oh, never do
Right.
anything again.
Right.
And then
But-
you get into trouble when you grow up because
Exactly.
unfortunately life,
yeah.
darn it anyway,
I know.
doesn't stay
Because
comfortable
I think
for
if
us.
kids don't experience anxiousness, then they, when they have to experience it later, it's really hard for them. and they
Yeah.
don't know what that feeling is, and
Right.
they don't know how to cope with that feeling, and it manifests itself into something else.
Yeah, well, and that's where the whole like substance abuse and a lot of the issues that come up, because once we teach our kids that you should never feel any discomfort or pain, that translates into, oh my gosh, I feel a little discomfort. I need something.
Right, everything
Give me
is wrong.
something.
Right.
Yeah. You know, I have one child who wants an Advil all the time. And I'm like, drink some water, you know, do something. All right, I'm getting, my children are helping me right now. They're the timers over there. They're giving me a lot of symbols. Okay, so basically, I think one of the main points in this is if we want to raise kids with grit, we need to model resilience and perseverance ourselves. So I think that it kind of comes back to us, I think, setting goals, not just having your kids do it,
Right.
but like as a family, I really like that concept
Yeah.
of just thinking about what's something that maybe as a family like we think would be really cool to try, like backpacking or I don't know, whatever it might be, and maybe as a family saying we're going to push ourselves to do something new or something like that. So that was my idea.
Yeah.
All right, well, any final thoughts on grit or resilience, guys, or are we wrapping it up here?
I've shared all of my grit-based thoughts, I think.
You know what? They were very, very good.
Good.
Good thoughts.
Glad to hear
Good
that.
thoughts. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us. We'll be back next week. Let's see what next week is. I think we'll have a similar group next week. We might recruit a few more. Next week is Camp Secret number 6. Kids are more capable than parents think they are. One of my favorites. So,
So true.
so true. So we'll see you all next week. Thanks for joining us for the Happy Campers Book Club. Bye.